Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Vande Guru Nisha Bhakta Nisha Nishavatarakan Tat Prakashan Satat Shakti Shri Krishna Chaitanya Sanyakam Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Sarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo Namaham Granthera Arambha Kori Mangalacharana Guru Vaishnava Bhagavan Tine Rasmarana Hai Vighana Vinashana Anayase Haya Nija Vanchita Purana Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear worshipable devotees, thank you so much for joining. We are reading Granth Srimad Bhagavatam. Actually, we are reading Caitanya-Caritāmṛta, but we are also reading Bhagavatam. This is the beauty of the Shastra, because all the bona fide Shastra tell the same message. So there are close to 500 verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam in Caitanya-Caritāmṛta. So we are reading the Chatushloki Bhagavatam, which is also in the Adi-lila of Caitanya-Caritāmṛta, chapter 1. And on Saturday, we discussed the first two verses of this, 53 and 54, where we discuss about the absolute truth and the relative truth. So what is the absolute truth? The Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, and what is the relative truth? The material world is like a reflection. So without the absolute truth, there cannot be a relative truth, which means there cannot be a reflection without the original object. So the original object is Krishna, the Supreme Lord, in the spiritual world, who is the cause of all causes, and then there is a relative truth, the material world. So now we will keep moving to the next verse, which is text number 55. It is the third verse in the Chatushloki Bhagavatam, and chapter 1, text number 55. Yatha mahanti bhutani bhuteshu uchcha vacheshva anu pravishtani apravishtani tatha teshu nateshvaham. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Shri Ki Jai. As the material elements enter the bodies of all living beings and yet remain outside them all, I exist within all material creations and yet am not within them. Purport: the gross material elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, combine with the subtle material elements, mind, intelligence, and false ego, to construct the bodies of this material world, and yet they are beyond these bodies as well. Any material construction is nothing but an amalgamation or combination of material elements in a varied proportions. These elements exist both within and beyond the body. For example, although the sky exists in the space, it also enters within the body. Similarly, the Supreme Lord, who is the cause of the material energy, lives within the material world as well as beyond it. Without His presence within the material world, the cosmic body would not develop, just as without the presence of the spirit within the physical body, the body could not develop. The entire material manifestation develops and exists because the Supreme Personality of Godhead enters it as Paramatma, or the Super Soul. The personality of Godhead in his all-pervading feature of Paramatma enters every entity, from the highest to the most minute. His existence can be realized by one who has the single qualification of submissiveness and who thereby becomes a surrendered soul. The development of submissiveness is the cause of proportionate spiritual realization, by which one can ultimately meet the Supreme Lord in person, as a man meets another man face to face. Because of his development of transcendental attachment for the Supreme Lord, a surrendered soul feels the presence of his beloved everywhere, and his senses are engaged in the loving service of the Lord. His eyes are engaged in seeing the beautiful couple, Sri Radha and Krishna, sitting on a decorated throne beneath the desire tree in the transcendental land of Vrindavan. His nose is engaged in smelling the spiritual aroma of the lotus feet of the Lord. Similarly, his ears are engaged in hearing the messages of Vaikuntha, and the hands embrace the lotus feet of the Lord and his devotees. Thus, the Lord is manifested to a pure devotee from within and without. This is one of the mysteries of the devotional relationship, in which a devotee and the Lord are bound by a tie of spontaneous love. To achieve this love should be to achieve this love should be the goal of life for every living being. Hare Krishna. This is such a beautiful verse in the Chatushloki Bhagavatam, and this is Adi-lila chapter 1, text 55. A lot of wonderful points here. And this verse is tied to prayojan. Prayojan means the fruit of bhakti. The fruit of bhakti is love of Godhead. And one can ask, well, how will I develop that love of Godhead? How can I see God face to face? Prabhupada is so beautifully mentioning here, his existence can be realized by the single qualification of submissiveness. So very, very important. And Prabhupada is repeating it again. Who becomes a surrendered soul. The development of submissiveness is the cause of proportionate spiritual realization. In short, that in one time someone asked Prabhupada, this was back in India before Prabhupada went to US, Prabhupada, what is the secret for Krishna Prema? Prabhupada replied, do you really want to know? He said, yes, I really want to know. You really, really want to know? Yes. Rinadapi suniche natarori vasaishnu namani namanadena kirtaniya sadahari. To become humble like a blade of grass, tolerant than a tree. This is all submissiveness. Without being submissive, one cannot become spiritually realized. I'm just repeating what Prabhupada is writing here. And that person will see Krishna face to face, as a man sees another man. Sthavara jangam na dekhi tara murti, sarvatra hoye ishta dev sfurti. That person does not see living or animate or inanimate. Oh, it's a tree or it's water. That person, pure soul, who is following these principles, sees his beloved, Shri Radha Sham Sundar, Shri Radha Gopinath, Shri Gaur Nithai everywhere, Ishtadev Sfurti everywhere. When he sees something beautiful, oh, if this is so beautiful, which is a tiny spark of my Krishna, how beautiful my Krishna must be. Oh, someone is very intelligent. Oh, Krishna is the source of all intelligence. Someone is very wealthy. What is this person's wealth? What is this person's mansion? Krishna is, Lakshmipati. So, very, very important. And how can we develop that? By engaging all our senses. So this verse Prabhupada quotes many, many times. Prabhupada is giving the translation here of this verse, like how Amrish Maharaj Savai Manah Krishna Padaravindayo Vachansi Vaikuntha Gunanuvarnane Karau Harira Mandir Marjanadishu Shrutim Chakar Achyuta Satkathodaye Grihanam Chatad. So engaging our eyes, our ears, our hands, our legs, our everything in the service of the Lord. And then that person will develop spontaneous love, which is the fruit of bhakti, Krishna Prema. So the more the secret is, we with submissive and humble way execute these limbs of bhakti, then one will see Krishna within and without. Because that's what the verse says, I am present within and without. So this is the fruit or prayojan. Any other comments before we move on to the next verse, 56? Okay. Yes, Kashish Mataji, you want to read this one?
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Dhanna Pranam to all devotees. Text number 56. Etavat eva jignasyam tattva jignasunatmanah anvaya yattirekabhyam yatsat sarvatra sarvada. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Charnavinda Swami Srila Bhakti Abhay Charnavinda Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation: a person interested in transcendental knowledge must therefore always directly and indirectly inquire about it to know the all-pervading truth. Purport: those who are serious about the knowledge of the transcendental world, which is far beyond the material cosmic creation, must approach a bona fide spiritual master to learn the science both directly and indirectly. One must learn both the means to approach the desired destination and the hindrances to such progress. The spiritual master knows how to regulate the habits of a neophyte disciple, and therefore a serious student must learn the science in all its aspects from him. There are different grades and standards of prosperity. The standard of comfort and happiness conceived by a common man engaged in material labor is the lowest body. The highest standard of such bodily comfort is achieved by a fruitive worker who, by pious acts, again in comparison impersonal Brahman. The spiritual grace is like the water Godhead. When one develops pure love for the Lord,
is it audible to others or is it just me?
No, Prabhu, it's not
breaking. Mataji's voice is breaking.
Yeah, it is.
Vasudhi Mataji, you want to continue from the second paragraph?
yes, Prabhuji. Please, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone. There are different grades and standards of prosperity. The standard of comfort and happiness conceived by a common man engaged in material labor is the lowest grade of happiness, for it is in relationship with the body. The high standard of such bodily comfort is achieved by a fruitive worker who by pious activities reaches the plane of heaven or the kingdom of the creative gods with their delegated powers. But the conception of comfortable life in heaven is insignificant in comparison to the happiness enjoyed in the impersonal Brahman. And this Brahmanda, the spiritual bliss derived from impersonal Brahman, is like the water in the hoof print of a calf compared to the ocean of love of Godhead. When one develops pure love for the Lord, he derives an ocean of transcendental happiness from the association of the personality of Godhead. To qualify oneself to reach this stage of life is the highest perfection. One should try to purchase a ticket to go back home, back to Godhead. The price of such a ticket is one's intense desire for it, which is not easily awakened. Even if one continuously performs pious activities for thousands of lives, all mundane relationships are sure to be broken in the course of time. But once one establishes a relationship with the personality of Godhead in a particular rasa, it is never to be broken, even after the annihilation of the material world. Prabhuji, will I continue or someone can say big purport?
Yeah. Maybe you can. We have read till this point. Yeah.
Oh, okay, another paragraph.
Sure.
One should understand through the transparent medium of the spiritual master that the Supreme Lord exists everywhere in his transcendental spiritual nature, and that the living entities' relationships with the Lord are directly and indirectly existing everywhere, even in this material world. In the spiritual world, there are 5 kinds of relationships with the Supreme Lord: Santa, Dasya, Sakhya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. The perverted reflections of these rasas are found in the material world. Land, home, furniture, and other inert material objects are related in Santya, or the neutral and silent sense, whereas servants work in the dasya relationship. The reciprocation between friends is called sakhya. The affection of a parent for a child is known as vatsalya, and the affairs of conjugal love constitute madhurya. These 5 relationships in the material world are distorted reflections of the original pure sentiments, which should be understood and perfected in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. In the material world, the perverted rasas bring frustration. If these rasas are re-established with Lord Krishna, the result is eternal, blissful life.
Thank you, Mataji. Do you have any comments to share?
What it's the first 2 paragraphs are a little complicated for me, but I understood that. So the highest perfection of for life is to reach that transcendental platform, and a person who qualifies to reach the transcendental platform, he only can get the bliss, the transcendental bliss. And another point here, what I understood is that there is a particular relationship with the Supreme Lord with different rasas, and with this through the spiritual master can help, and he is the medium between a devotee and a Supreme Lord, the spiritual master, to understand this transcendental spiritual nature. And then there are 5 rasas, and here Prabhupada explained very nicely that those rasas, and he gave the examples like in the material world how this rasas means, whereas in the spiritual world we know the examples are Santya rasas, we know like Mridanga, Kartal, those are Santa rasas with Supreme Lord, that's a connection and relationship with the Lord. And then dasya is as for example Hanumanji as a dash with Lord Rama. And then sakhya ras is as for example Arjun and Sri Krishna. And then vatsalya rasa is Mother Yashoda and Krishna. And madhurya rasa is gopis, the relationship of Krishna with the gopis and Radharani. So these are the real relationship in the spiritual world, whereas the material relationship, Prabhupada explained and gave the examples of different rasas. And those are all like temporary and perverted rasas in the material world, whereas the other rasas are the rasas which can re-establish between Lord Krishna with the eternal soul. Back to you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Kant Prabhu, you want to read the rest of the purport?
Sure, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Can you please share your screen, Prabhuji? Thank you, Prabhuji. From this and proceeding 3 verses of Caitanya-Caritāmṛta, which have been selected from Srimad Bhagavatam, the missionary activities of Lord Chaitanya can be understood. Srimad Bhagavatam has 18,000 verses, which are summarized in the 4 verses beginning Bhagavatam. The 18,000 verses which are summarized with Aham Evasham Eva Agre 53 and concluding with Yat Syayat Sarvatra Sarvada. In the first 3 verses, in the first of these verses, 53, the transcendental nature of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is explained. The second verse, 54, further explains that the Lord is detached from the workings of the material energy Maya. The living entities, although parts and parcels of Lord Krishna, are prone to be controlled by the external energy. Therefore, although they are all spiritual in the material world, they are encased in bodies of material energy. The eternal relationship of the living entity with the Supreme Lord is explained in that verse. The next verse 55 instructs that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by his inconceivable energies, is simultaneously one with and different from the living entities and the material nature. The knowledge is called Achintya Beda Tattva. When an individual living entity surrenders to the Supreme Lord, Krishna, he can then develop natural transcendental love for him. This surrendering process should be the primary concern of a human being. In the next verse, 56, it is said that a conditional soul must ultimately approach a bona fide spiritual master and try to understand perfectly the material and spiritual worlds and his existential position. Here, the words Anvaya Vyatrikabhyam directly and indirectly suggests that one must learn the process of devotional service in its 2 aspects. One must directly execute the process of devotional service and individually avoid the impediments to the progress. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
So, this verse talks about the Abhideya section. So, 53 and 54 talk about the Sambandha, the relationship. 55 talks about the Prayojan, the fruit, which we just discussed. 55 talks about the Prayojan. And 56, which is this one, talks about the Abhideya, or the process of devotional service. And what is the foremost thing? Tad Vijnanartham sa Guru eva vigachet. One should approach a bona fide spiritual master and ask, what should one ask? Oh, when is the new cricket match? What's the cricket score? When will I get married? When will I get job? No. One should ask directly and indirectly about the process of devotional service. How I can revive my sambandha with the Supreme Lord. How I can re-establish or rekindle my relationship with the Supreme Lord. How I can achieve the prema, the love of Godhead. For that, we need the spiritual master, not for asking about materialistic things. Prabhupada is emphasizing the word directly and indirectly. So directly means the do's, okay, how to chant properly, how to read Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, asking questions directly, how to worship deities, how to serve Vaishnavas. These are like directly inquiring how to offer respects to the devotees, how to engage the family in Krishna consciousness. These are like directly, but there are some do's, don'ts also. Don'ts means what I should not do, which will affect my devotional service, or asking that I am attached to wealth. This is the don't, how I can overcome that. Or I'm attached to opposite sex, or I'm attached to watching things which are not good for me, or I'm too much attached to my family, or attached to my position, or anything, or I'm struggling with some regulated principles. So the don'ts, what I should not do, oh Gurudev, please tell me. So it is very important. Sarve. What's that famous verse? Sarve vidhi nishedasya etayor eva kinkara. Satatam smartavya Vishnu vismartavya na jatuchit. Sarve vidhi nishedasya etayor eva kinkara. Vidhi and nished. Vidhi means process. Nished means the things we have to refrain from. So, satatam smartavyo Vishnu. Always remember Krishna. Vismartavya. Never forget Krishna. Sarve, all the do's and don'ts, the vidhi and the nished, are subservient to this one principle. And what is that principle? Always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. So this is the abhideya. One must approach, one must ask the spiritual master. Tadvidi pranipati na pariprashnena sevaya. Bhagavad Gita also says 434. Updekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. One should approach a tattvadarshi, a spiritual master, Diksha Guru, Shiksha Guru, Pat Pradarshak Guru, etc. and approach and ask the science of bhakti. Jigyasa. So asking question is not a wrong thing. We must ask questions. Scriptures encourage us. This is not something blind following. Arjuna was asking questions to Krishna. Shukdev Goswami is asking questions to Parikshit Maharaj. Anywhere we see there's a conversation going on. Question and answer. Sages of Naimisharanya asking questions to Shusuta Goswami. So this is Bhagavatam, not just teaching theory, but also how to practically live it. So the more we ask genuine questions, directly or indirectly, we will certainly make progress and try to follow those responses. We'll be able to rekindle our eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Prabhupada makes a very nice point also. There are 3 types of Ananda. We missed to discuss on that. Jad Ananda. Jad Ananda means the pleasure of this material world. What is the pleasure of material world? Some wealth, some opposite sex, some maybe position, some money or some beauty. The best of this earthly pleasures is nothing in compared to the pleasures of heaven. So Maras, Ananda, gardens, and etc. etc. The most beautiful person of this world is like a frog in front of the heavenly damsels. The most wealthy person of this world is nothing in compared to the wealth of heavenly planets. But here it is mentioned, the wealth of the heavens or the pleasures of the heaven is nothing, is insignificant in comparison to Brahmananda, the pleasure of liberation. So, the impersonal liberation. And that pleasure is like the water in the hoof print of a calf in compared to the ocean of Premananda. So, three Anandas, the Jad Ananda, material world, the impersonal Jyoti Brahmananda, and topmost Premananda. So that Premananda, which Lord Chaitanya, whose appearance was yesterday we celebrated so wonderfully, has come to give that Premananda, the topmost pleasure we can't imagine. We think this pleasure of America is very nice. But what is the heavenly people must be kind of spitting at this kind of pleasure. Like if a pig, right? A pig is thinking that stool is very nice, right? The pig is having a lot of pleasure in there. But a human being, would he be envious of the pig? Wow, the pig is enjoying such nice stool. Does anyone feel like that? No one feels like that. No sane human would feel like that. They'll say, oh my God, tucha, it's such low class, right? And he feels, oh, he's enjoying that nice stool. Wow, very nice. But the human beings will enjoy their food, some pizza or some other food, etc. Or some wealth or some opposite sex. But the demigods must be like spitting, oh my God, look at these people. They think they're very happy. Like we may think as a pig, seeing a pig, oh, the pig is himself very happy. Oh wow, very nice. But the demigods must be spitting at that. Oh, look at this person. He's thinking he's so happy in this world. Look at the illusory energy of the Lord. And then the impersonalists must be thinking, look at these heavenly people, they're thinking they're happy. But the real happiness is the ocean of pleasure, Prema Pumartha Mahan. So we can't even imagine what we have been given. His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj said, if we ever imagine what we have been given, we would faint in ecstasy. We can't even imagine what Lord Chaitanya is giving us to the least deserving people, the topmost thing. Any other comments, additions, any comments, we covered the 4 verses of Chatushloki till 56. Anyone has any additions before we move on? Okay, so now we will read Srimad Bhagavatam.